Okay, good evening, everybody. We are continuing with Parshas Tazria and Mitzorah, this week's doubleheader. I know that it's not the most upbeat subject, tsaras, leprosy, and plagues, and being isolated, but it's all Torah, and that's our job is to learn it and to learn the lessons that come from it. So. We are continuing. We're just finishing up Parshas Tazria before we go into Parshas Metzorah. And in Perek Yud Gimel, Pasuk Nun Hey, the Torah says, "V'roa hakohen achrei hukabesas anega." The Kohen sees after the nega has been laundered, washed. V'hinei lo hafach hanega es eino. It has not changed its appearance. V'hanega lo fosa, and it hasn't spread. Tamehu. The garment is tamei pechesasi b'karachto b'gad. It's a what do you call it? It's a tamei sign. It's a tzaras, which is tamei. So notice that the terminology, it says lo hafach hanega es eino. It hasn't turned its eye. Literally, its eye. I mean, in this context, it means its appearance. And one of the ideas there that seems to be alluded to, which I heard from Ram Cohn in Cleveland, lo hafach eino, means that this whole thing is stemming from what we call sorus ayin. Sorus ayin means a certain amount of stinginess, and what we would call in English a begrudging eye. People speak Lashon Hara. It's generally they begrudge other people's success, and they have this kind of a negative view of other people. It's what we call an ayin ra, not the ayin hara, to put the heebie-jeebies on somebody, as we usually understand ayin hara. But here we're talking about the ayin. An ayin ra, a person can't tolerate other people's success and other people's things that happen good to other people. And in general, they have this very critical view of mankind. So the Torah here calls it lo hafach eseno. And the underlying lesson here is that the root of Lashon Hara is usually envy. The root of Lashon Hara is that somebody is jealous of somebody else and somebody has a resentment. Chazal say that a person who's jealous of somebody else, you're left with nothing but your own jealousy. He doesn't suffer from your jealousy. And the Pasuk initially says, Rekavatz moskina. Jealousy causes the bones to rot. It means that of all the bad traits that a person has, actually feel a physiological internal effect when a person is jealous and just eating themselves up inside. And rekavatz moskina means that their bones actually rot from the jealousy. So the question becomes, what is the way? How do we overcome jealousy? This is hakina taiva kavod motzina sada mina olam. Kina taiva and kavod take a person out of this world. The first one on the list is kina. The first one on the list is jealousy. Jealousy is very difficult. Taiva means desires. There's various desires for whether for forbidden pleasures or excess of permissible pleasures, where physical desire could take a person out of this world. And kavod is the pursuit of honor. The first one on the list is kina. The first one on the list is jealousy. And how does a person overcome jealousy? So first of all, let's understand what jealousy is. As one of the Bali Musar puts it, jealousy is actually that a person is angry at HaKadosh Baruch Hu for how he's running his world. That if HaKadosh Baruch Hu has decided to distribute the wealth or the talent or the abilities a certain way, the honor or the prestige, he's given it out a certain way, and somebody is jealous of somebody else. If Reuven and Shimon are jealous of Shimon, so what he's really saying is he's not happy with the way HaKadosh Baruch Hu is running his world. And the Gemara says, Ein adam nogeh b'mucham lechavero afilu kamali nima. A person doesn't touch something that's prepared for one person, another person cannot affect it or touch it even a hair's breadth. There's nothing you can do. You can't take anything away from anybody else. Everybody will get what they're meant to get. The Gemara in Yuma says, Afilu reish gargisa min shemayim malulei. Even the head of the crew that digs pits alongside the road, you get this roadside crew that's doing construction. The head of the crew is a divine appointment. He's appointed in Shemayim. Reish Gargisa means Shemayim Manulai. He's appointed from heaven. So sometimes people are upset. Why did somebody get a position or somebody got a certain prestige, or certainly when it comes to money? And jealousy just means that a person is upset with the way HaKadosh Baruch Hu has decided to distribute the goods. Now, it's extremely unreasonable if you stop and think about it, because when we're jealous of somebody, we're really jealous of only one isolated point about this person. So somebody who are really not interested in being that other person, and I'm not interested in the problems that he has, and I'm certainly not interested in having his in-laws. Yet I am jealous of the amount of money he has. Well, it's an all or nothing proposition. Would you really want to be that person with everything he has? There's a famous story about a woman who's sitting on an airplane, and a lady is sitting next to her, and she glances over and she sees, wow, this woman's wearing a diamond ring, and it's a beautiful diamond ring. I mean, a really gorgeous diamond ring. And she looks at her, she says, that's a beautiful ring. She says, yes, it is a beautiful ring. And she says, wow, I mean, boy, look at that glitter and look at those colors. And she says, yes, this is the famous Platnik diamond. She goes, oh, wow, never heard of that. She goes, yes, but it comes with a curse. She goes, really? She goes, yes, the curse is called Mr. Platnik. But sometimes we look at what somebody else has and we say, wow, boy, I wish I had that, or that person's husband or children or wife or house or position or money or prestige. And, 1 second goes the whole package. Do you know everything else about the person? Do you know what their health situation is? Do you know what their family situation is? Do you know what they've gone through growing up to get to this point? We're taking a look at a very isolated part of a person's life. They use an expression, they talk about a person became an overnight sensation. So they talk about somebody who was they made some scientific discovery, and they said, wow, he became an overnight sensation. And he said, sure, after 30 years of research, he finally broke through and that became an overnight sensation. The overnight sensation, and whether it's in sports or anything else, there's probably a lot of work that went into it. Michael Jordan once said that people wish they could be Michael Jordan for a day. But it's not being Michael Jordan for a day. It's being Michael Jordan all the time, where you can't go shopping without being hassled by people, and you can't go anywhere without going incognito, and you can't get recognized. Now, we don't really feel sorry for Michael Jordan. Let's get one thing clear. We're not. Michael Jordan has over $1 billion. He'll be okay. But the point that he's making is a valid point. That it's not one isolated incident, or one isolated factor in a person's life. Person's jealous. That means you want the whole package or you don't want the whole package. And most of the time, we really don't want the whole package. We knew what that package was. So this Lashon Hara comes from this resentment, generally, of somebody's got something good going for them. That's why it's very difficult for us to listen to other people being praised. One of the forms of Lashon Hara is called Avak Lashon Hara. Avak Lashon Hara literally means the dust of Lashon Hara. That means where a person hasn't actually said anything disparaging about somebody else, but he's been in a situation where either he usually set somebody else up for speaking Lashon Hara, what we would call in professional hockey. And he didn't score the goal, but he got the assist. So for one of the examples of Avak Lashon Hara is to not excessively praise somebody in the presence of other people, because if you excessively praise somebody, say somebody sits there talking about, wow, Reuven's really a great guy, and he's wonderful, and he's this, that, and the other, there's likely to be somebody who will say something negative, like, yeah, but, he's got messy handwriting, because we can't bear the fact that Reuven is getting this kind of praise and whatever the prestige is. And therefore, where's that coming from? So, first of all, to a certain extent, it's coming from, we don't, it's a lack of bitachon. If a person has proper trust in HaKadosh Baruch Hu, that HaKadosh Baruch Hu has determined what each person is going to get, and it's obviously a very, very difficult level to achieve, where we have such bitachon. People talk about have bitachon. Bitachon is not an easy thing to achieve. There are different levels of bitachon, and it takes a tremendous amount of work to actually trust in HaKadosh Baruch Hu and realize that HaKadosh Baruch Hu is running the world. And I would just parenthetically want to add, even in this period that we're in right now, there have been so many tragedies in Klal Yisrael. Part of bitachon is realizing that we don't want anything negative to happen, obviously. But whatever is happening, it's not because of coronavirus. It's happening because of the Ribbon Shalom. And if it wouldn't be one thing, it would be something else. So obviously from a human perspective, when it comes to bitachon, we have to make the proper hishtadlus and not behave recklessly and irresponsibly. But we do have to maintain the proper bitachon. We have to maintain and realize that it is at the end of the day, it's HaKadosh Baruch Hu is running the world. Now, practically, for President Dovid, who would like to try to overcome jealousy, which we all would, because jealousy wrinkles and we feel the effects. The best and most effective practical way to overcome jealousy, ironically enough, is to actually concede that we're jealous of something, whether to ourselves and in certain cases to other people. And if you see, for example, if you see somebody who's driving a nice car and is really in your kishkis, the guy's driving a Jaguar, a BMW, or a Porsche, if you would go up to that person and say to them, you know what, I'm really jealous, that's a nice Porsche, you'll see that once you've gotten it out of your system, you feel better. Somebody whose son has gotten accepted to a yeshiva, which you'd like your son to get accepted to, and he wasn't. He was rejected. You come up to a person, you know what, I'm jealous that your son got accepted. You'll feel better. Why it is, I'm not sure, but that's the fact. And therefore, this ayin, the ayin that's alluded to in this pasuk, has to do with the person himself. That we should have that ayin tova on people. That we should have. We should, in Yiddish, there's a word to fargin people. That we should be happy for other people, and we should realize that we'll get what we're meant to get. Other people will get what they're meant to get, and there's no way to interfere with HaKadosh Baruch Hu's world. And we don't want to interfere with HaKadosh Baruch Hu. We'll let HaKadosh Baruch Hu run the world the way He sees fit. Okay, that's as far as Parshas Tazria. Now we go to Parshas Mitzorah. And the Torah says in the first pasuk in Parshas Mitzorah, the Torah says, well, second pasuk actually says, "V'daber Hashem el Moshe leibor, zos ties Toras haMitzorah, biyom Torah." So this is the procedure of the Mitzorah. The Torah in this context really means the procedure. And the day he comes tahor, v'huva el hakohen, and she be brought to the kohen. Now, the first question that we're going to deal with here is that in pasuk beis it says v'huva el hakohen, he should be brought to the kohen, and the very next pasuk says v'yotza hakohen el mechutz hamachna, the kohen goes outside of the camp. Excuse me, v'roa hakohen v'nei neipa dagatzura b'natzuras b'natzurua. So what does it mean, v'huva el hakohen? First of all, it seems a contradiction. The pasuk beis says he should be brought to the kohen. Pasuk gimel says the kohen goes out to see him outside of the camp. So what does that mean? What is the v'huva el hakohen? Number one. Number two, the commentaries ask, those tia Torah mitzorah, the word tia seems to be redundant. The Torah could have just easily said zos Torah mitzorah. Why does it say zos tia Torah mitzorah? What is the word tia? What's that an indication of? So the Mefarshim explain like this. Number one, that by any physical illness, physical illness generally requires a visit to the doctor. The Torah says a doctor, nitan rishus l'rofei l'rapos, so the doctor is allowed to cure people. And the physical illness requires a trip to a doctor. A person who tries to cure himself, I'm not talking about alternative medicine and whether it works or not, that sort of thing. But in general, a person who's got a serious illness would go to a doctor, and he needs a doctor, he needs a medical expert in order to cure him. We find Amoraim, who were medical experts. Shmuel, the Gemara says, was a medical expert. He even treated Rabbi Yehuda Anasi, who had severe eye pain. And a doctor is, the Torah says, if a person's not well, they go to a doctor. Here, the Torah says that the cure has to come from within the person himself. And that's, the commentaries see it in the extra word tia. Not clear to me exactly how the implication works, but that's what the Mefarshim say. Zos tia Torah mitzorah, biyom ta'araso, that the cure of the mitzorah has to come from himself. It has to come from within. So the way a person overcomes tsaras, because it's not a physiological caused illness, even though it has physiological manifestations, it has to come from within. Zos Torah beyond Torah, so on the day that he becomes purified, v'huva el hakohen. And that's why the next pasuk says, v'hine nirpat nega hatzaras, the plague of tsaras has been cured, min hatzarua, from the one who has it. Now, that's obvious that it's been cured from the one who has it. Who else would it be cured from? And that's why the commentaries say, Min hatzarua, it's cured from him, meaning from within him. He himself participated in the cure by changing his attitude. Therefore, the idea here, the whole idea here is that it should cause a person to want to get cured or cure himself, but the cure is coming min hatzarua, from the man himself. He cures himself, so to speak. Now, how do we reconcile this seeming contradiction? Does he go v'huva el hakohen, or does the kohen v'yatsa hakohen, does the kohen go out to him? So which is it? So there are different approaches. Some of the commentaries point out the huva el hakohen means the information is brought to the kohen. That means somebody sees him outside of the camp, and he calls to this person and he says, "Listen, I seem to be. Can you please report to the kohen that the symptoms seem to have cleared up?" And the huva el hakohen doesn't mean literally physically the person, because he's not even allowed into the camp yet. The huva el hakohen, the information is brought to the kohen, and then the yatsa hakohen, the kohen goes out to the person. Number one. Number two, other commentaries say the huva el hakohen means that he's brought to the edge of the camp, and that's why the Torah says the yatsa hakohen el michutz hamachane. It doesn't say that the kohen says. It doesn't say the yatsa hakohen michutz hamachane. It doesn't say the kohen leaves the camp. The kohen goes el michutz hamachane. That means that the kohen goes to the edge of the camp, up to the point he's still within the Jewish camp. The Metzora goes up to the edge of the point, but he's not allowed to enter. And from there, the kohen looks at him and sees whether or not he has, whether or not he is truly past his tsaras, his plague. So the Metzora who comes in, the way to cure himself is again alluded to, and this is a theme that we're going to be coming back to several times, which the commentaries keep going back to, that Zostia Torah Sa Metzora, the word Torah, which I told you earlier means a procedure, but Torah obviously alludes to Torah. This is a person who's used his mouth inappropriately, and the cure is to be involved in Torah and to use his mouth for Torah and for mitzvahs. Obviously, even something of building other people up, encouraging people, complimenting people, that's also a mitzvah. But that a person should be accustomed, certainly a man should be accustomed to be involved in Torah study and in discussing Torah and speaking about Torah and using his mouth properly. So the Metzora then comes to the edge of the camp, and the kohen goes out to see him. Now, other commentaries point out, HaKadosh Baruch Hu does not withhold anything that anybody deserves. If a person has sinned, he suffers the consequences. If a person does tshuva, then he's paid for doing tshuva. Tshuva is not an easy thing to do. So this Metzora, who has the Kohen go out to him, now just imagine, the Kohen leaves and he starts walking out. The Kohanim were prominent people. Hopefully today, Kohanim are also prominent people. But in the old days, the Kohen was considered, it's a man of prominence. So when he goes walking out to this man, other people are going to see the Kohen, and they're going to join along with the Kohen. And the Kohen himself has to be somebody who examines Torah, has to know the law as well. He has to be a very big Torah scholar. And so other scholars are going to go with him. Then you have this entire entourage that goes out to greet this person who's had tsaras and has been isolated outside the camp. One of the commentators points out this is a tremendous honor for that person. And this honor is also a payment. He suffered the shame and the humiliation of being expelled from the camp, which was tremendous. If you imagine a guy who's covered with tsaras, discoloration, and he starts walking out of the camp. And people are looking, oh boy, there he goes. Oh boy, I wonder what he was talking about. And off he goes outside of the camp. And everybody sees him, and he's got to leave the complete Jewish camp, and he's isolated. Tremendous humiliation, tremendous embarrassment. And now, Mida Keneged Mida, it's going to be made up to him. He's done tshuva, and therefore he is given the honor of having this entire entourage led by the Kohen who are going to come out and they're going to greet him. Now, in Pasuk Daled, the Torah mentions several items that are used in this procedure to purify the Metzora. And the Torah says, "V'tziva hakohen v'lokach lamitaher shtei tziporim." He takes two birds, chayos tahoros, two living kosher birds. The eitz erez is a piece of cedar wood. Ushniso loas is a piece of scarlet fabric. The Azov is some sort of a plant called a hyssop. I believe it's spelled Hyssop. Probably a good word to use in the international spelling bees. But it's what it's translated as, a hyssop. I mean, honestly, between us, it doesn't really matter if you call it a hyssop, if you call it an azov, either one, I don't know, never heard of either of them. So we'll call it an azov. It's a hyssop. So the Kohen takes these three things, and then the Torah goes through an entire procedure, and he shechts one of the birds, and over in Pasuk Hey, he shechts the bird over this water, it's called Mayim Chayim, the living water. And the second bird, he takes the bird and these three items, the cedar, scarlet fabric, and the hyssop, and he dips it in the blood of the other bird, and he sprinkles it on the person 7 times to purify him. Then he sets free the other bird. A very, very elaborate procedure where he takes one bird, shechts it, and he takes all these other pieces of equipment, dips it in the blood. He's spraying the blood, which has been mixed in the water, and then he sprinkles it on the mitzorah. Okay, that's what the Torah details as the procedure. What's going on here? What's really going on here? So the Rashi brings down, obviously, that a cedar tree is a very tall tree. I'm going to read you the words of Rashi inside here. Rashi says, the Eitz Erez, the cedar tree, Lefisha negoim boim al gasus haruach. The plagues of Mitzorah come for a person being haughty. Ushni tolas the Azov. Now, this scarlet thread is called shni tolas, but a tolas, we know, is called a worm, which is a very lowly animal. So there's a play on words, but it's called shni tolas. The Azov. Azov is a hyssop, which is a very, very small plant. So Rashi says, Mata kanoso v'yisrape, what should this man do in order to be cured? Yashpil atzmo migeuso, he should lower himself from his haughtiness, kitolas uke'ezov, like a worm and a hyssop. That's what he should do. So, that begs a question. Okay, there's a message being communicated to this guy. We take a piece of fabric that's got the same name as a worm, and he takes a hyssop, which is a very, very low plant. And obviously the message to him is, lower yourself, buddy. You're a little too full of yourself, as the expression goes. And therefore, realize the world, it's not all about you, and lower that ego, get that ego in check. So the obvious question is, okay, so why the cedar tree? The cedar tree is a very tall tree. So why is it that he brings the cedar tree? If he's bringing this, if the whole idea is the symbolism is to lower himself, why does he take the cedar tree, which is an example of something very, 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 very tall? So there are several important lessons here. Lesson number one is that the cedar tree is a reminder of what his original sin was. Now, take that cedar tree, focus on that. Where did you go off, buddy? You went off because you saw yourself a little bit too much as a cedar tree, as an Eitz Erez. Now take that tolas and that azov, and internalize that lesson. Get off of your tree. Climb down from your tree. I think they even use that expression. Climb down from the tree. That person sometimes commits himself and goes out on a limb, as they say. Get off of your cloud, buddy. So the Erez is a reminder that a person's ego is out of control, which brought about the trouble to begin with. But there's another lesson here. You see, sometimes people think that humbling themselves or showing a certain amount of contriteness means to actually physically be contrite. So people sometimes, you walk around, a guy's bent over, and a guy could be walking around bent over thinking to himself, I'm so humble, which is not a form of humility. That's a form of haughtiness. He's proud of how humble he is. So here the Torah is telling us a very, very important lesson. And we're not talking about physical just the external. We're talking about really on the inside. And therefore the Torah says, you know what? There are going to be certain people who are Azovs, who are Erizes. There are certain people who are prominent. You may have the Rav of the community, and you may have somebody who's a leader of a certain organization, and you may have a lot of people there. There are many. It could even be a wealthy person who's a very prominent individual. Nothing wrong with that if that's what HaKadosh Baruch Hu gave a person. A person became prominent. It could be a person with talent. The person may be a great painter. He's an Erez when it comes to painting. Somebody else may be an Erez when it comes to be a singer. But just because you're an Erez externally, you especially have to remember to be a Tolas and an Azov, to be a worm and a hyssop. I mean, it's very easy for somebody devoid of any abilities, capabilities, or talents to be humble because it doesn't really have anything to be humble about. Whereas when somebody is more prominent and somebody has an ability and a talent, that person is compared to an Erez, the cedar tree. That's the reminder of the Torah here. The Torah is not telling you don't physically walk around like a hunchback. The Torah is telling you that internally you have to feel that way, meaning that a person has to appreciate that. And there's no one in the world who doesn't have some talent, some ability. It could be a woman who's a great cake designer, and it could be a man who plays the violin. It could be somebody who's got the ability to listen to people. That's one of the greatest talents for a person, is to be able to listen quietly while somebody else talks, because they may have to pour their heart out and tell you about their worries or their concerns. That's a talent. That's an ability. And a person who has that ability can be proud of themselves or to realize that that ability is coming from HaKadosh Baruch Hu, and don't let it go to your head. That's what the Torah is telling us over here. Now, there's another lesson here. Remarkable. It's all in the Torah. It's all there. It's all there. The other lesson here is when a person is not well, everybody should be healthy, Be'ezer Hashem and Klal Yisrael. When a person is not feeling well, it's very humbling, and it depends on what a person has. If a person's basic daily physiological needs are not functioning normally, that's extremely humbling. And a person realizes, wow, I'm a weak human being. I can't even go about my daily activities without feeling completely out of control here, which is very, very humbling. So the commentaries say there are two things over here that the Torah wants. The Torah wants, number one, that a person should understand that on the one hand, the tzaras itself is very humbling. It's like a physical illness. And the more serious the physical illness is, the more helpless a person feels, and the more contrite a person becomes. But the Torah says that's level one. There's a higher level than that. And the higher level than that is that when a person is healthy and a person is well, he should become contrite. That's a much higher level. Rav Gifter Zatzal, the Rosh Yeshiva of Cleveland, tells a chassan once came to him, right, I think it was the day of his marriage or the day before his marriage, his wedding, and he came to Rav Gifter and he said, Rabbi, please give me advice. I'm about to get married. Give me some advice. So Rav Gifter said to him, do me a favor. I'll give you one piece of advice. Under the chuppah, when you're davening under the chuppah, don't shuckle so hard under the chuppah. It's not right that a young person like you should make yourself look so important. That's a very common malady people want to put on a show. They'll try to make yourself look important. There's an expression, cream floats to the top. The person has a talent or an ability, people discover it. And if he doesn't have it, why should he want people to discover it? And therefore, the Torah is telling you over sure, the person who's going through tzaras is going to do tshuva because he realized that Kadosh Baruch Hu has gone and humbled him. But now, after he's cured, take that eitz eres and continue humble yourself. That's a higher avoda, and it's a higher level. So in pasuk hey, the Torah says that this bird is shechted al mayim chayim. Now, Rashi says that he puts in this water, which comes from a stream, and then they shecht this bird and they drain the blood into the water. But you'll notice that the Torah uses an expression mayim chayim, and here's a very important lesson. The Torah is telling us, there's a danger, especially we who are 20th and 21st century people and you get all sorts of psychological maladies that exist today. People who are low self-esteem, and all of these psychology has exploded. Back 150 or 200 years ago in the shtetl, there was no low self-esteem. People didn't have time to have low self-esteem because they were busy running away from Cossacks and trying to find shoes to put on their children's feet, bare feet, and trying to find some soup to eat for supper. So they didn't have time to have low self-esteem. Can you imagine a guy saying to his wife, Zeldy, I don't think anybody likes me. And she says, listen, Herschel, just get out there and chop some wood so we could burn logs for the fire because it's freezing in the winter over here, and stop worrying about your self-esteem. There wasn't time for that kind of nonsense. Nowadays, since we have prosperity, everything is wonderful. So all of a sudden we got nothing else to do, so we can depress ourselves by thinking about low self-esteem. So the whole approach to Musar nowadays has changed. We are not people we're so weak that we're not people who can really rip ourselves down negatively. It's always advisable if a person has tripped up in their avodas Hashem, if a person perhaps has sinned in some way. There's an expression in Yiddish, klap al chet and geh weiter. Don't dwell on it. You have to confess your avera, and you have to feel regret for doing it. But if we dwell on it, all we're going to do is depress ourselves. 100 years ago, maybe the Navardic approach, people can grow from that sort of approach. Our day is very rare. It doesn't mean there's nobody, but it's very rare in our day and age that somebody can be self-critical and be very harsh with himself and use that as a springboard for growth. Most people nowadays, if they're too self-critical and harsh, it'll just be a springboard for medications, and therefore people will end up, with all sorts of antidepressants. That's what happens nowadays. And therefore, that's not our approach. Our approach is that it should be al mayim chayim. That means that the contriteness that a person feels, the tshuva that a person does for his avera, it should not bring a person to sadness. Sadness is an avera. And this is also a malady people suffer from. People think, well, I'm going to do tshuva, so they walk around looking morbid. That's not tshuva. That's not what HaKadosh Baruch Hu wants. HaKadosh Baruch Hu wants us to be upbeat. HaKadosh Baruch Hu wants us to be mayim chayim. And therefore, the Torah is telling you over here, this entire process, which is really a symbol of all processes of doing tshuva, should be mayim chayim, that it should energize us. And the sign of energy in avodas Hashem, that a person should be active, and a person should be upbeat, and a person should be smiley. Person, your face, somebody once said, your face is a reshus harabim. Your face is public domain. So you have an obligation to let people see smile, walk around with a smile. I believe they tell, what do you call it? What do they call it? They used to call them stewards and stewardesses on airplanes. Now they call them, I forgot what the word is now, but what they used to call the stewardesses, they used to tell them that if you're in a bad mood, start smiling an hour before the flight. Because if you start smiling, the smile actually, the external affects the internal. And therefore, the flight attendants were told all the time, smile. And that's a general rule in life, that if a person physically forces themselves to smile, somehow it'll have effect on the internal. That's the mayim chayim. The mayim chayim means we have to be upbeat, number one. And number two, the altar of Slobodka, I believe it was when World War I broke out. So the Slobodki Yeshiva, there were all sorts of problems for the Jews. And there was a group of boys, including the altar's son. There was a group of boys, they had to try to smuggle themselves across the border to escape whatever it was, the army or whatever the anti-Semitism, whatever the decrees were. There was a group of boys, they had to try to sneak across a certain border. It was a dangerous mission. And there was a boy in the Slobodki Yeshiva who always walked around with a very, very, very dour face. He was never smiling. And the altar of Slobodka had mentioned to him, you have to smile. People shouldn't see you looking gloomy. And the boy, he told him several times, and it didn't improve. And the altar of Slobodka would not allow his son to join the group that this boy was in when they were trying to sneak across the border. He felt that this is a serious spiritual flaw, which could bring a danger. And therefore, he wouldn't allow him to go with this boy. That means that we have to be mayim chayim. Number one, we have to be upbeat. Number two, there are these two birds. and one of the bird is shechted over the water, over the Mayim Chaim, and the other bird is set free. And the commentary is actually, there are different commentaries who see the same idea, but in the reverse order here. One of the commentaries points out that slaughtering the bird over the Mayim Chaim, Torah is compared to water, the water of life, and slaughtering the bird into the Mayim Chaim means that a person should, one of the commentaries sees in that a person should be involved in, this person who's had this speech flaw should be involved in the waters of Torah, and the bird set free represents that other inappropriate speech should be sent away. Other commentaries see the symbolism. It comes out to the same thing. It's just the way they see the symbolism. One of the commentaries say it's the opposite. The bird that's being slaughtered represents the negative speech, and that the bird that sets free is that the person should use the other speech positively. Be that as it may, the lesson is the same. That a person should be immersed in the waters of Torah. Ein mayim ela Torah, the Gemara says. Torah is compared to water. Why that is? Because water is obviously the most basic need in life. The physical need in life is water. Torah is the most basic spiritual need. For a Torah Jew, specifically a male, has to have a certain amount of attachment to Talmud Torah, a certain amount of connection to Torah learning. So the two birds are shechted. Now the bird that's set free in Pasuk Zayin, where the Torah says, V'hizal metar al tzabidasra sheva pelabim v'tiharo v'shilach es hatzipor achai al pnei hasoda. He sends it out over the field. The bird being sent away over the field symbolically means that this bird is now able to rejoin his society. This bird who he was holding, the bird was actually captured. Now he sets this bird free. The bird is able to rejoin his bird society. And symbolically, that this man who's been isolated will now be able to rejoin his society. He's been all alone. He's been on his own, and now this man will be able to be free to rejoin his society. So that's the symbolism. That's the purification process. What is interesting here, the commentaries point out, if you take a look, if you have the time, not if you have the time, if you make the time. Right now, we all have time. It's a question always in life of making time for something, not having time for something. If it's important enough, you make the time for it. It's amazing how when something is important, people find the time for it. If people say, well, I don't have time for it, that means it's not important enough. If you look through this section, you will find that the word lamitaher, the man who is being purified, in this section of the Torah, running from the beginning of the parsha till Pasuk Pasuk Tes and Pasuk Yud, you'll find that the word lamitaher, it goes a little further than that. It goes till maybe till about Pasuk Tes Vav. Whatever it is, no, it goes even further. It goes till Shlishi, till Pasuk Chav. The word mitaher is used 8 times. You'll find that the word mitaher appears 8 times in this section. Symbolically alluding to the fact that the process is 7 days of counting, 7 days for the purification, and then on the 8th day, this person becomes the procedure is finished. So it's an 8-day process alluded to by the 8 days of by the 8 times that the word mitaher is used. One last point in Pasuk Tes, there's a very interesting Rashi points out in Pasuk Tes, the Torah says, "V'hoya bayom hashvi yigalach es kol se'aro," that he should shave all of his hair, es rosho v'es zakano, his hair, and his head, and his beard, and his eyelashes, gabos es so kol se'aro yigaleach, everything, he's shaved clean, and not something which is normally prohibited for a man to do. A classic example where the Torah overrides itself. I mean, sometimes people will ask, why is it permissible to push a goat off a cliff on Yom Kippur? Is it that tsar b'alei chaim? Isn't that cruelty to animals? And the answer is, well, how do you know that it's cruelty to animals is prohibited? The only reason it's prohibited is because the Torah says it's prohibited. How do we know that one is not allowed to that man is not allowed to shave his bodily hair? Because the Torah says, it's the same Torah who says that you're not allowed to do it. It's the same Torah says when you are allowed to do it, when you must do it. And that's what's happening in Pasuk Tes. Somebody who plays chess, you're not allowed to take one piece and jump over other pieces, but the knight could. How could a knight jump over other pieces? Because whoever said that he can't is the one that said he could. So by extension, the Torah that says that you're not allowed to do something is the same Torah that says when you must do it. And therefore, over here we have an example of a man who shaves himself. So tomorrow we will discuss, Be'ezer Hashem, Rashi and Pasuk Tes, Metzora. We'll continue tomorrow with Rashi, Perek Yudalad Pasuk Tes, and what the Torah is trying to communicate. Good night, everybody. Refuah Shleimah to all the Cholim in Klal Yisrael, and we should see Yeshua soon. Amen.